There's something so nourishing in these ideas for me. So I'm hoping they stimulate something in you of who you are in truth and where you are and what you've gone through and what you're facing. Yeah? And these are just the ideas. And for me, they're like nurturance. Yogananda recommends, similar to Rumi, God sends you those experiences you need that you might profit by them. If you run away from those lessons, you will still have to learn them sometime, somewhere else. Every experience is a good teacher if you learn from it. I think another way of putting this is from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and he wrote, "The best thing one can do when it's raining is to let it rain." And that fits, I think, with the Taoism, the way. The way cares for us. The divine cares for us. You know. So we're approaching the inmost cave, getting to our deepest ordeal, reaching the inmost cave. The hero seeks the heart of this new world, where the greatest treasures are guarded by the greatest fears. James Hollis writes, "It is perfectly natural at midlife to feel distress about the diminution of energy and the undoing of all we have laboured to secure. But underneath this distress, there is an invitation. The invitation is to shift gears for the next part of the journey, to move from outer acquisition to inner development. We must accede to the greater wisdom of the process." And this is okay in theory. If you're the one going through it, then may the angels of light support you in it, and whoever else you can call on to help. I find I'm so fortunate. There's so many beings I know of, and I call on them for help, and at a particular time I get that help. It's a beautiful thing. Carl Jung wrote, "Who looks outside," well, he didn't write this, he wrote something that, and this has been reduced from that, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." In Theosophy, this is Bailey, Alice Bailey, "The objective of each aspirant is to expand his or her consciousness, to include that which lies beyond herself, to attain to the more elevated states of consciousness. On the probationary path, whilst the man is on the probationary path, he is taught principally to know himself, to ascertain his weaknesses and to correct them." Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Which for me is a fantastic reminder that we are creators, we are co-creators, you know. And it might not be my personality that's choosing, it might be my soul or spirit. I might get dragged into something and my personality says, "Oh, all right, here we go again." And there's a joy in that. So we're down into the supreme ordeal. The way grows narrow and dark. You're about to taste death and it will change you. And I've experienced a couple of times in life where I felt that I died. It's like part of my personality, ego died. And then there was a new consciousness there. So this is in Vogler's book, and I can't work out if he wrote it or Campbell wrote it. You enter the inmost cave and look for that which will restore life to the home tribe. The way grows narrow and dark. You must go alone on hands and knees, and you feel the earth press close around you. You can hardly breathe. Suddenly you come out into the deepest chamber and find yourself face to face with a towering figure, a menacing shadow composed of all your doubts and fears and well armed to defend a treasure. No matter what you came for, it's death that now stares back at you. Whatever the outcome of the battle, you are about to taste death, and it will change you. And the most obvious result of the supreme ordeal I could think of was a book I read by Viktor Frankl on the Second World War. He was in a concentration camp, and he describes every day, left or right of him, people were just getting shot. No reason. He couldn't work out why he wasn't or when it was coming. But he survived to write a book, and he writes, everything can be taken away from a man but one thing. The last of human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstances, to choose one's own way. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And I'm reminded of a Buddhist book I was reading where the monk said, heaven and hell are an instant away. It depends what you're thinking. You could go to hell with one thought, you could go to heaven with the next, you know. And I might have time for another Issa poem. Issa wrote this poem after his daughter died. This dewdrop world, it may be a dewdrop, and yet, and this reminds me of when something major happens in your life, the difference between where the mind goes and the pain you just have to feel. Yeah? And another Issa poem, don't weep. Insects, lovers, stars themselves must part. And these help me to remember that, yeah, this world is an illusion. It's an amazing, fantastic one. But the world, the universe is also inside of us. And like the meditation this morning, I am one with the eternal. I am eternal life. You know, I'm one with the universe. And a very powerful question from Annie Besant, are you willing to surrender everything in order that you may know the truth? Because our ego mind will fight this, or mine will, forever. No, I know what's best, I'm fine. Truth would probably burn me to a cinder in a moment. So we're in the ordeal, that's probably why I'm talking so much about death. Ram Dass wrote, if I am going to die, the best way to prepare is to quiet the mind and open my heart. If I am going to live, the best way to prepare is to quiet the mind and open my heart. from my Uncle Ram Dass. Now I'm going to go into some ideas now that might be very challenging. And they're ideas I believe in, they're by Yogananda. And after Ananda passed and I started my first book with Yogananda, I've read most of what he's written or published. And I really trust him. So these are just ideas that I hope will help. They help me. They help me to keep my peace in this very dramatic world. Yeah? The Bhagavad Gita, before we go to Yogananda, Krishna tells Arjuna, get away from this ocean of suffering. Be in the world and do your part, but do not be caught up and bound by its delusions, or you will be enslaved. Yogananda writes, the terrible things that are happening in the world now are distressingly real. But when you are able to behold them as creations of light and shadow, you will understand that they are only a show, a part of God's play. You are only dreaming that you have a body of flesh. Your real self is light and consciousness. He also writes, God showed me in a vision. Now this is referring to the Spanish Civil War. God showed me in a vision that those who are dying in the fighting in Spain are only dreaming a terrible dream of death. As soon as their consciousness is lifted from the body, they awake as from a nightmare and are glad to be free of it. Our life experiences are all part of a dream. Man himself has created the nightmare of war, but after each of his victims have been thrown from their bodies, they realise that it was only a horrible dream from which they have awakened. They know they are not dead. This is a great metaphysical truth. And of course, this doesn't mean don't do anything. Yogananda again, once you are out of this body, you realise you are not dead. You are free of a nightmare. So death is not the end. It is a freeing of the consciousness from imprisonment in the physical dream body. That release brings a sense of great freedom. Everything here is nothing more than God's motion picture. We are the players. We must play our parts well, but we must not identify ourselves too intensely with the drama. When you realise that life is a dream, then you are free. So that might challenge your current belief system, but I just offer it as something that supports me. Now, I often ask myself, what's my task then? What can I do while I'm here? I have fantastic resources, time, enough money, good company, friends, supportive, everything. So my task, just quickly, to acknowledge what is, which I learnt from Buddha. Don't argue with it, just acknowledge this is the way it is. Yeah? Accept all as grace. I either believe in God or I don't. I either believe that God is loving or not. So can I accept that everything is grace? I have to reprogram my brain to develop trust because it has other ideas. The more I trust, the more I can relax, the more I can enjoy life. live in gratitude, be kind, the theme of this forum, and become love. And at the present, these are the ideas that come to me as what my task is. And you might have a completely different one. But this seems to be my task. And in each moment, how can I be love? How can I be loving? What is love? What is love in this moment for this person or for myself? So we come to the reward where the dragon has been slain or vanquished, and the heroes can seize the sword of victory and lay claim to their reward. There's this beautiful book I read often, From the Outer Court to the Inner Sanctum, by Annie Besant. And I've changed he to she here. In crossing into the temple, she has come within sight of the great teachers, the masters, and in the possibility of the touch of such lofty companionship, all life to her forevermore is changed. She will have touched the permanent, and the transitory cannot again shake her, as in the days when she knew not the eternal. Her feet are forevermore upon the rock, and the waves will not be able to wash her away from it and give her again the trouble of swimming in the tossing sea. I highly recommend that book. Ram Dass writes, as you dissolve into love, your ego fades. You're not thinking about loving, you're just being love, radiating like the sun. Rumi writes, in the driest, whitest stretch of pain's infinite desert, I lost my sanity and found this rose. The road back. So the road back. The hero has a choice at this point. Do I go back to the community in the village and share do I give to my group, what I've learned? Or should I just go off somewhere else and sit on a chair and live by the ocean, now and then, of course? Willingness to proceed. Bailey writes, the adept wastes no time in self-pity or self-justification, for she knows that the law has placed her where she is and where she best can serve, and has learnt that difficulties are ever of man's own making and the result of his own mental attitude. The disciple has tasted the joys of life in the world of illusion and has learnt their powerlessness to satisfy and hold him. Yeah, as beautiful as a thing is, it's a thing. And at some point, And dear Krishna Das, many of you might know. Krishna Das, he wrote a brilliant book called Chance of a Lifetime. I was so sure that I needed to do some special practice or get some secret mantra in order to cure myself of my unhappiness. Of course, all I really needed to do was stop thinking about myself all the time. It's a lovely down-to-earth wisdom, this man. Okay. Rumi writes, after the certainties, the visions, this final loneliness you flower in. And Sri Ramana Maharshi, this is an idea that gives me positive impulse. It is true. You will eventually go back to your source. As much as I love being me and on a good day, in awe of this world, love my friends, I'll eventually go back into my source and I'll be in bliss. And then hopefully I can send some bliss. Resurrection, a final purging and purification before returning. And I've done a lot of men's group work over the last 5 years, and so I've researched the history of the male psychology and men and what have you, and this for me is a very powerful image of how the return, the Maori warriors are some of the toughest warriors in the world. But after battle, how do you let them back in the community? How do you let someone who's been in that level of experience, and the way they do it, or they did it in the past, was the Maori warriors came back from war and they sat in the hot baths to ease their physical pain, to allow their emotions again, to let their minds settle, to begin to forget what they've been through, being the warriors for the tribe. And the women sit around. I never know when the emotions come, but they do. The women sit around the warriors and sing. And they help the men to come back to their balance, come back to themselves, come back to that feminine part of themselves. And then they can re-enter the community again. I have no idea why that moves me so deeply, but I think one of the issues in our world is that the masculine and the feminine are separated too much. And I've tried to help the men find that inner feminine within themselves so that they can be more available in the world, more true to themselves. And this is an idea I love. I put it into one of my songs. Meister Eckhart, a German Catholic theologian and mystic, he writes, "The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one eye, one seeing, one knowing, one love." And Eckhart also writes, "If the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough." Just part of a Rumi poem. "Behold the body born of dust, how perfect it has become. Why should you ever fear its end? When were you ever made less by dying? When you pass beyond this human form, no doubt you will become an angel and soar through the heavens. But don't stop there. Even heavenly bodies grow old. Pass again from the heavenly realms and plunge into the vast ocean of consciousness. Let the drop of water that is you become 100 mighty seas. But do not think that the drop alone becomes the ocean. The ocean too becomes the drop." And this is my conclusion. We've been through a bit of a journey, and here we come back. We return with the elixir. We return with the treasures we've found. Commencing a new life. Mother Teresa writes, and this hit me very strong when I read it, "If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. And what the world's going through at the moment, it's good to remember that we belong to each other. Amma says, you don't need to look for love. Love is all around. We just need to work through all our blockages to feeling that love. Ananda Tarishan writes, we must learn to appreciate the good and loving things in life. For such is life, that we must learn to take both joy and pain with a smile on our lips. We must believe in the theosophy that has taught us that there is no death, only life to the ones who live with God. Yogananda, do everything with an attitude of love. Lao Tzu, when you realise there's nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. And a quote I really like, and I've only got a couple more to say. This is from Neil Donald Walsh's book, Home with God, I think it's called. It's the last book he's written in this series. Your journey is not an endless search for God. It is an endless experience of God. Understood this way, the reason for the continuous journey becomes apparent. The journey is a process. It is the way that you know God, indeed, that you know yourself as that which is divine. He suggests searching for the perfection in every moment. Search for it diligently, faithfully. Know that it is there and that you will find it if you will but look deeply. And I have one more idea. Rumi writes, and I'm coming back to my original idea of just go into the silence. After all my extrapolating and ideas and sharing and drama, Rumi writes, let silence take you to the core of life. Thank you. Thank you so much.